Jackson is the WBA champ. Over in the WBC, it is Terry Norris. We saw him beat John Mugabe. There's Gianfranco Rossi, the IBF champion. And today he battles #1 IBF contender, Darren Van Horn. Alongside me, as always, my partner, Alex Wallo. Alex, welcome to Roma. I know it's one of your favorite cities. We stood here a year ago getting ready for a Rossi-Van Horn fight. And oh, how things were different just 1 year ago for both of these fighters.
Dan, Darren Van Horn was the youngest champion anywhere in boxing a year ago when he fought Rossi, and we expected he would bring youthful energy and enthusiasm into the ring. But instead it was Gianfranco Rossi who fought like a kid, and Darren, who looked like a shot veteran just going through the motions. Since that fight, Gianfranco has had 2 easy title defenses. He appears to be brimming with confidence, perhaps even a little bit overconfident based on how easy he won the first fight. But he's been a professional for over a decade, and it's always difficult to predict the performance of a 32-year-old fighter. It is even harder to predict the performance of a 21-year-old fighter if his name is Darren Van Horn. Darren looked like a real comer when he upset Robert Hines to win the title, but then he had a total reversal of form in suffering his first defeat against Rossi. He says that he took Rossi for granted and that he remembers nothing after a first-round knockdown. Well, he really fought like a man in a trance, and that trance has continued through his 5 fights since, in which he looked just plain lousy. Darren says with the title on the line, he will get himself back together today. The odds makers do not believe him. He has gone from a 10-1 favorite in the first fight to a 3-1 underdog here today.
Let's go ahead, if we could, and take a look at the tail of the tape. You'll notice the biggest difference in age. Darren Van Horn, 11 years the junior of Gianfranco Rossi. Everything else relatively the same. Neither fighter has problem making weight. Let's go to the rules, if we could. The IBF version will apply. The 10-point scoring system, a 3 knockdown rule, is in effect. The standing 8 is not. A fighter cannot be saved by the bell in any round, and only the referee can stop the fight, and the referee is that man, Randy Newman. A veteran, Randy Newman, and he is going to rule over this IBF junior middleweight title bout between that man, Darren Van Horn, the challenger, and Gianfranco Rossi, the hometown favorite. Darren Van Horn wearing the red trunks with the blue and the white trim, and we have Gianfranco Rossi wearing kind of a burnt orange trunk with some leopard trim. How's that, Alex?
Okay.
Action here in round 1 from the Palazzo del Ghiaccio. Normally used as an ice rink. Means literally ice palace. A lunging jab that time by Rossi, and a wild left that time by Van Horn, blocked, and there you see Van Horn hitting while they're holding, and Rossi made a face.
A couple of changes from the first fight, Dan. Much smaller ring here, and that would favor the challenger now, Darren Van Horn, coming over here because Gianfranco Rossi moves more. Another difference is Darren Van Horn, for the umpteenth time, has changed trainers. Lou Duva, who worked his corner when he won the title, has trained him for this fight.
The first time that Duva and Van Horn have ever worked together. Darren Van Horn spent 5 weeks down in Norfolk. Oh, and there's Darren Van Horn. Boy, coming away from behind the back and hauling off with the left hook. And boy, that doesn't swing with the crowd or with Randy Newman.
I think he's within his rights to do that. I mean, defend yourself at all times. And Randy Newman did not penalize him. He just said, let's cut it out. Randy Newman will not be intimidated by this crowd. He's a thoroughly professional, competent referee. I think this is a much better start for Darren Van Horn, obviously. I mean, the first fight he was in there, Rossi hit on the break, and again, warnings from the referee. I was going to say in the first fight that Darren was down in 24 seconds into the fight, so this has to be a better start, but he's roughing him up a little bit more. He's negating the speed advantages that Rossi used in the first fight.
I think it's also important, Alex, for Darren Van Horn to start like this because of the fact that he's looked poorly in the fight since the Rossi fight. He's not looked sharp. He hasn't looked good at all. And I think just from a confidence factor, here's a guy that needs to have a couple good rounds.
Boy, there he out-jabbed Rossi, beat him to the jab. There Rossi trying his own roughhouse tactics inside.
Well, there was a whole lot of pushing. Oh, and a good right hand from Rossi. That one caught Darren Van Horn flush. You couldn't see any effect on the knees, but it was a good right.
Darren was a fighter who had a reputation of having a very solid chin. Rossi was not known as a big puncher, but it was Rossi that dropped Van Horn twice in the first fight.
Inside the final 10 seconds of round number 1, and another good right hand by Gianfranco Rossi, the champion. And we're back. Action early on here in the second round. Darren Van Horn caught a couple good shots from Gianfranco Rossi in the first round. Rossi has a cut over his right eye. A cut that doesn't appear to be bleeding a great deal, but from this vantage point, Alex, looks to be somewhat serious.
That may well be, Dan, a cut that he had when he won the title from Lupe Aquino. He had a terrible cut over his right eye very early in that fight in round 4, and he fought through and won the title with it.
The cut comes out of Rossi's eyebrow and continues on down. And again, Rossi hits while they're clinched. And the warning from Randy Newman.
Yeah, and Darren went into a little bit of swoon to make sure Randy Newman caught it.
A wild left hook by Van Horn sails way over the head of Rossi, and Rossi swarms him.
I don't know if you mentioned it, Dan. This is Randy Newman's birthday today, and I don't think the IBF people who assigned him to this fight did him any favors. He's going to earn his money.
Yeah, it was. A matter of fact, a year ago that we spent his birthday with him. Randy Newman refereed the Carl the Truth Williams and Mike Tyson fight, that 93-second fight where Mr. Newman walked into his share of controversy about whether or not he should have let the fight continue.
And he didn't budge an inch on his position.
Randy Newman, 42 years old today. Good right hand from Rossi. The crowd overreacting a bit. It caught a lot of glove. 4 jabs in a row from Darren Van Horn.
You see Darren,
none of them doing much.
Right, you see Darren trying to bend a little bit. Lou Duba's been trying to get him to get a little bit lower, get a little bit more of his body into his punches instead of being straight up and arm punching. The major problem with being straight up for Darren is that he pulls straight back and he gets caught, especially when Rossi puts his punches together.
The referee does not score during this fight. Oh, and a good left hand by Gianfranco Rossi. As I mentioned, the referee doesn't score. There are 3 scoring judges. One from the United States, Bernard Hardy. One from England, Dave Paris. And then one from Italy, Benedetto Montella, who also was a judge the last time these two fought in Atlantic City last July. Van Horn slipping that punch, ducking underneath it. Darren Van Horn working the body. An aggressive opening 2 rounds. We're coming to the end of the second. Here we go in the 3rd round. This championship fight is scheduled for 12. And it has been an in-your-face fight so far.
In your face, but an awful lot of that time is spent wrestling, Dan. There's been an awful lot of clinches, a lot of fouling by both men.
You see right there, and Rossi is hurt.
Low blow.
Rossi complaining about the low blow.
Over here. You ready to go? Ready to go? Let's go.
Referee Newman has the opportunity to give Rossi time to rest. Rossi said, "I'm okay, I'll continue to fight." Again, both fighters at times lunging and off balance and running into the other fighter.
Terrible, terrible fight to referee, Dan. I think Randy Newman's going to have to penalize one of these guys for an infraction to really make them stop.
Again, you see Van Horn lunging with that left, and you can see Rossi kind of rocking back.
Exactly
and
right.
Trying to load up with that right hand and catch Van Horn walking right into it, Alex.
Exactly what he did in the first fight. He has been a little bit more aggressive, but he's still loading up too much with that right, and more importantly, he's trying to throw it out of range. He has not found the proper range. And Gianfranco Rossi is absolutely a tough man to line up because he's so awkward. He moves in ways that you don't expect him to. He punches when you expect him to rest. He grabs you when you expect him to punch.
Again, you saw Van Horn becoming a little bit off balance.
Oh!
He lunged, and there was a good right hand.
And for the first time in 14 rounds, 15 now with Gianfranco Rossi, Darren caught him lunging in.
And caught him with a good, solid right hand. Now, it didn't appear to have a great deal of effect on Rossi, but it might have been the best punch of either fight for Darren Van Horn.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I was waiting for him to wobble a little bit, Dan, quite frankly, because Gianfranco does not have a great chin. He knows how to protect it. He was knocked cold by Lloyd Huntington when he was a welterweight fighting for the European Championship. He was knocked down 5 times by a badly faded Donald Curry, and he quit in that fight. So he does not have an iron chin, but he has been able to protect it. Darren Van Horn is not a one-punch knockout guy. He says, I'll knock you out with conditioning, not with a single shot.
We're inside the final 30 seconds here in the 3rd round.
And a better round for Darren Van Horn. He just scored with an inside punch. He's trying to get a little something done on the inside. Did nothing in the first fight on the inside.
Boy, you saw Van Horn lunging again and missing. This is the end of the 3rd round from Marino, Italy. And we're back, and it's the beginning of the 4th round. Alex Wallowed and Dan Deard are your way here from Marino, Italy for the IBF Junior Middleweight Championship held by Gianfranco Rossi, wearing the orange trunks, being challenged by the former title holder Darren Van Horn, wearing the red trunks with his name on his waistband. There has been a lot of body contact, pushing and shoving, and very awkward moments up to now.
And not a lot
Darren Van Horn, I don't know if that's his blood or not, Alex, underneath his eye. It looks like it must be. I don't see any blood on Gianfranco Rossi.
Yeah, Lou Duba was working on that, not as a cut in between rounds, Dan, but just trying to take some swelling down. It might have just started to open.
It looks like it is underneath the right eye of Darren Van Horn. Down on the cheekbone. It appears that the... Oh, and a good right hand that time by Van Horn.
Yeah, and Rossi is laying his jab out much lazier. There, he snapped one, didn't land it, but he has been very lazy with the jab, and Van Horn has had some success countering it.
I was going to say that Rossi, who was bleeding from a cut over his right eye in the 2nd round, that cut appears to be effectively closed as of this moment. There's no blood showing. Rossi thought about winging a left while they were still in the clinch. Needless to say, this very pro-Rossi crowd begins to clap and chant for their man. And again, it's 1 or 2 punches and then body contact by both fighters. And you see Randy Newman giving Gianfranco Rossi a warning that time.